Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And today we are talking about Janáček, his Sinfonietta, and the tone poem rhapsody orchestral thing called Taurus Bulba, which is not the movie with Yul Brynner and Tony Curtis, which actually has a superb score by Franz Waxman, which I hope to talk about at some point because it's absolutely stupendous. That's a whole nother video. No, I'm talking about Leos Janáček, the Czech wizard who in the last decade or so of his life created virtually his entire oeuvre. And what a strange, remarkable pile of stuff it is, including 4 or 5 operas and a choice, and I mean choice, selection of orchestral music. And the recording that I turn to when I want to hear the Sinfonietta and Taurus Bulba, and I have to say, as often as not, I want to hear both. So I want a record that had the two of them together is this one. This is Rafael Kubelik with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra. And here is the problem with CDs of Sinfonietta and Taurus Bulba. The fact of the matter is that Janáček wrote so little orchestral music, and some of it is well known, and some of it is very, very little known. And he also wrote that wonderful cantata, the Glagolitic Mass. And so if you take those 3 things and maybe 1 or 2 other small items, you can sort of work on 2 CDs. But the Sinfonietta and Taurus Bulba are so much more popular than anything else, and the Mass, than anything else he wrote for purely orchestral purposes. I'm not talking about operas, that record labels split them. Because that way they get to sell 2 CDs instead of 1, which makes me crazy because I like them together. I think it's convenient and I love listening to both of them because they're only about 20, 22, 23 minutes long each. It's not like it's a big deal, time-wise. And the Kubelik recording was originally Sinfonietta and Taurus Bulba on 1 disc. The Glagolitic Mass was alone on another disc. And so getting them together proved to be kind of a pain in the neck. Although right now there are lots of CDs that have both of them, but originally. So I was always hunting around for these 2 things together on 1 disc. And there were a few issues that did have them. There was also an Australian Eloquence one that had both of them together, the Kubelik recordings, that is. And here they are on DG Classicon, which no longer exists, but you still may be able to find them coupled together. And if not, well, you could do worse than to have 2 Janáček CDs instead of just 1. But wow, I remember so vividly how this music struck me because I had never heard of this guy. And the record cover was this weird colored orange blobular, thing. You could probably find it on Google. I mean, I just had no clue. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was going to sound like. All I know is that the Sinfonietta has 14 trumpets. It's just like crazy, absolutely crazy. And, 9 regular trumpets and 3 other trumpets and then 2 bass trumpets. There are 14 trumpets in all. And I just never heard anything like it. The music is so twitchy, so exuberant, so exciting, so abrupt, so rough-edged and spiky and rhythmically energetic. It's just unbelievable. In fact, I did a video on how it's done on Janáček and his style generally, which I do urge you to have a look at because it's just fascinating how this guy managed to sound the way he sounds. I was hooked. I was totally hooked. And I'm not normally a fan of the first recordings that I impress upon or that impress me, but there were never so many recordings of this music out back then in like the 70s that you could get 1,000 different versions of these 2 works together. So here it was on Deutsche Grammophon, and it absolutely shattered me, blew me away. These are swift performances. They are completely unsentimental. Janáček writes very abrupt endings, and Kubelik doesn't do anything to gild the lily. It doesn't slow down. When Janáček makes the music just stop, it just stops. But the sound is wonderful here. In Taurus Bulba, for example, you really hear the incredibly important organ part, which in so many later digital spectaculars and whatnot, it sounds awful. It just sounds awful. Here, the balances are beautiful. There is an air around the trumpets in the Sinfonietta, the trumpet choir, the brass choir that plays the fanfares at the beginning and the end. They're actually written for, as I said, 9 trumpets, 2 bass trumpets, 2 tenor tubas, and timpani. And, there's something just glowing about the sound of it here, which no other recording has quite duplicated. Although there are marvelous other recordings, they sound different. And this one, it seems to be, just captures both the excitement and the majesty of the piece with no compromises whatsoever. It's extraordinary. And on this particular one, you also get the concertino, his little piano concerto, the concertino with Rudolf Firkuzhny. One of the fascinating things about Janáček is that he uses the diminutive, the Sinfonietta, little symphony, right? It's enormous. I mean, it's written for this crazy, huge orchestra. The concertino is actually a work for chamber forces and piano, but it is, at the same time, and it's only 16 minutes long, a very quirky, strange, and amazing work, just like the other two. So I really, really like this disc. And even if you can't get it in precisely this configuration, these performances are Janáček must-haves, in my view. They are the performances I reach for when I'm in a Janáček orchestral mood. Vocal music is another matter entirely. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.